Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Bizzy. I hope you enjoyed today's story. And if you do, please subscribe. Here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Bizzy. I'm so happy you're here. By the way, before you even start listening, will you subscribe? I'd be so grateful if you subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. And I am thrilled today, you guys, to have my friend John Brewer here. Hi, John. How are you?
Hey, Lizzie. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really thrilled. I met John when I moved to Delray, and he is not only transforming his life through sobriety, but also you just became Catholic. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. It's been incredible. Never thought I'd be here like 10 years ago.
What do you think it was? Why do you think it happened?
Oh, it's real simple, in the sense that my pain and suffering led me to AA. I'll say that. AA led me to a higher power. Higher power led me to God, and God led me to the Catholic Church. It's that simple. As I became more and more involved and going through the steps, I realized it wasn't my show. I realized it was something else's show. And with some great men who didn't force anything on me, but gave me books, Fulton Sheen books, really got me going. Never even knew that show existed, and I watched these old black and whites with Frank Sinatra and him coming out, and he's got the thing on, and I'm like, this guy wrote books. The Life of Christ was a big book that someone gave me right in the beginning, and I started reading that. And I realized I always thought you had to have a certain kind of naivete to be religious. And I've tried everything: Buddhism, Scientology, born again Christian. We were Lutheran. I was baptized Lutheran. I didn't need to get baptized when I got confirmed. But I always thought you had to have a certain level of naivete. And I realized at the age of 60, it was just the opposite. You can ask as many questions as you want. Something that somebody said to me in the beginning was, science doesn't deny God, it reveals him. Mm-hmm. And so I went down the rabbit hole of astrophysicists who had converted, because I that's the kind of, that's where God led me. He was like, I'm not hiding the ball. Go look at these guys talk about how the deeper they dig into DNA and there's order. And if there's order, there has to be an order maker. If there's laws, there has to be a law maker. There's, the watch of the universe, there has to be a watchmaker. And yeah, it just kind of just progressed naturally from there.
Where do you think your curiosity came from?
I've always been curious. As a little kid, I was curious. A funny story. My mom told me they put me on watch one time because I was going to church at the time. And I basically told her, if there is a heaven and a God, I'm ready to go see him now.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So my mom was like, okay, count the knives. Yeah. So I've always had that quest or that seeking inside of me. I just got off the path, and not that I'm blaming anything. Broken family, moved around a lot. The things I used to survive didn't serve me as I got later on in life. Arrogance, not loving other people. Being very defensive, being very self-centered. It serves you. It can protect you, but in the long run, it's not going to serve you. And it's taken me, large part of my life to get here, but I'm so grateful to be here finally. And now I got to keep it. Yeah. That's the other part, which means checks and balances every day.
So will you tell us like what your childhood was like, and where did you come from? Where did you grow up? Where did everything begin?
So
a little bit of your story.
I'll give you. I don't want to. So Levittown, Long Island, the original prefab community. The World War II, post World War II. Everybody had one of two houses, either the ranch style or Levitt style. Dad worked at an auto parts store. Mom was pregnant at 16. She had me when she was 18. That was her second marriage already. Alcoholism was in the family. Lost my grandfather at the age of 55. I lost my younger brother at the age of 52. Alcoholic. And yeah, I went to school one day in kindergarten, and my mom told me, "We're not going to school today." A van pulled up, basically threw all our stuff in a van, and we moved around, bounced around a lot on Long Island. So, different schools. So I kind of got to I had to change my personality a lot. Went to one school and I was getting bullied, and then the next school I'd be the bully.
Mm.
Just kind of just going back and forth. Middle school in Plantation, Florida. My mom got remarried. We moved from Long Island to Florida. My stepdad was part of the original Century Village, Deerfield Beach, was
Wow.
construction. He was a chef by trade, went back into the restaurant business. The reason why I consider Delray Beach my hometown is because I lived here for 5 years, and that was the most stable my life had been up until that point.
Wow.
And I went to high school in Delray Beach. Actually, met my wife here. 30 years separated. We can get into that later. But, this is kind of where I played football here, 4 years of school here. Even that was a bit traumatic because when I moved here, I was finishing up eighth grade. And I went from being in a school in Plantation, which was 80% upper middle class Jewish. I was going to bar mitzvahs, bas mitzvahs. I had a three-piece white powder suit doing the John Travolta moves and sneaking out onto the greens with the girls and joints and stealing drinks from the bar and all that stuff, to basically going to Carver Middle, which it was a different experience. I got my ass kicked within 2 weeks. Was not a fun experience, but I eventually found one guy that I'm still friends with, Nicky, and his brothers were both football players or in high school, so people backed off of me. But yeah, it was then high school, all those people kind of dropped out, and high school just became a great experience. Yeah, ninth through
Wow.
12th grade were some of the best years. But I was also learning some bad habits then too.
Well, here in Florida, it was really wild,
I
wasn't it
was.
back then?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that was like Miami Vice
It
time,
really
wasn't
was.
it?
Yeah, it was. I had a friend who lived out west Hagen Ranch Road, and there were certain times when the airplane hangar had towels in it and you were not allowed to go near the airplane hangar. You'd see cops out to different houses out there. A lot of people were commercial fishermen. They'd go out, catch a fish, and look what's inside of the fish.
Right.
No, it was a crazy time here. It was a crazy time here for sure. But I loved it. The beach, sports, and just a lot to do around here. But then my family, my mom, my stepdad, decided to call it quits, and I thought he was going to be in my life forever. And basically, at 18 years old, he was like, "I'm out. See you, bye." And so my mom was a bartender at the time. That's how she survived. That's how we survived. And I went away to college for 1 year. Didn't have the discipline to do very well. Basically, I didn't know you had to go to class. No one told me. Didn't have much money up there, so came back. Basically, packed the family up, and we moved back to the house that I was originally born in Long Island. And my real father got back involved, telling me the whole time he just wanted to be with my mom again. Got back with her again. They both started drinking. And within a year, she left. My sister left. I eventually left. And yeah, just wandered aimlessly for a while.
Wow, so
Yeah.
much chaos, so
Yes, a
much
lot of
chaos.
chaos. That's the easiest
Yeah,
way to put it. A lot of chaos.
a lot of
And I
chaos.
can look back at that now and go, yeah, it was chaos. Couldn't tell my mom about it. I've tried to talk to my mom about it. God rest her. But it shut right down.
Yeah, and I think we're from that generation, especially now everybody's talking about feelings and what it was like growing up and seeking help and all those things. And back then, I don't think our parents had any of those resources.
Latchkey kids, right?
Yeah,
That's what they called us,
exactly.
latchkey kids. Yeah.
Exactly. They were more self-absorbed, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I've thought about that. The greatest generation ever is the World War II generation, the guys
Yeah.
that gave everything for this country. And I don't know why, but it seems like they gave birth to a generation that almost flipped the opposite way. And now we're part of Gen X, so it's kind of like we were. It's interesting when you look at it that way. And it's not a knock on anybody; it just kind of seems a way that things progressed as a country.
It's
You
so
know.
true. It's so true. And so neither of your parents got sober ever.
No, my father was sober. He was a white knuckler. My mom She was able to stop drinking when my sister had her first child, because my mom was like, I can't wait to babysit. And my sister basically told her flat out, there's no way I can trust you in front of my kids. And she cold turkeyed it. Eventually went back to it again. And she stayed with us right before she passed. And we were both drinking together at that time. So that's probably 4 years ago. Um, I would, I wouldn't say my mom was alcoholic at the end, but she definitely liked to drink. She lived with
Yeah.
my grandmother, and when my grandmother passed, she pretty much uh, went downhill right after that. We had to actually run down there during COVID and get her and bring her back up here and clean up the apartment and all that stuff. So I know it's something she struggled with. My brother, 100%. My younger brother was an alcoholic, I think 6 times in rehab, and he also mixed that with cocaine. And one of the things we do in alcohol is, when you have alcohol, you compare yourself to other people. So if I compared myself to him, I wasn't that bad. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And that's
Yes,
the
totally.
comparison thing keeps a lot of people. You'll always find someone who can outdo you when it comes to their bottom. But how do you feel inside? And I was miserable. You know.
And what happened 3 years ago that was like almost 3 years ago? We're just shy of his 3 year anniversary, by the way.
Thank
Congratulations.
you.
I have no doubt you're going to get there. And what was it that was the catalyst that brought you to your knees to say, I want help? Because that's a big thing for a man
Yeah.
to do. Because so many men are like, I've got it. I've got it again. We're from the 80s and high school classes of the 80s. And so, that wasn't big to ask for help. So, what made you do it? What happened?
The event itself was hanging out with an old buddy. I used to run nightclubs with him, and we met in Tampa to go see the Lightning. It was around this time of year,
Hmm.
obviously. June 9th is when I got sober. June 8th, we went to go see, or June 7th, we went to see a hockey game in Ivor City. We went staying there at a hotel. I got there. We started drinking, and I knew I was going to put a hellacious hangover on myself. I was drinking red wine, tequila, beer. About 2 weeks prior, I got pulled over, and by the grace of God, was not given my third DUI. Still don't. It was still one of those moments. I used to be on one of the city boards here, and after the city meeting, I went to have a few drinks at the Sail Inn. I think I had 3 shots of tequila and 3 beers in less than an hour. So I got in my car, and the guy pulled me over, like, right. And I don't live that far from the Sail Inn,
Yeah.
crossing over Swinton, and the lights went on. And he said, "You kind of rolled through that stop sign back there." And I was like, "I didn't roll through a stop sign." So he comes up and he says, "I'm going to ask you if you'll take a sobriety test for me." And I said, "You're asking me?" And he says, "Yeah." And I know that I'm done. And I'm like, "Here comes number three." And I'm hoping that they're spaced out enough where,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I know guys that got 6 months to 2 years
Wow.
in jail. And so he goes back to the car, and I don't know if he called me in and they ran my plate. And because I had a little bit of a reputation around, maybe they said he's real close to his house. He came back and he said, "All right, I'm going to let you go and have a good night." And I didn't say anything to my wife that night, but I was petrified. And about a week later is when I met my buddy. And, weed is also part of my story. I didn't bring my vape pen with me, which was not normal. I took that thing with me everywhere. I was a slave to it. You look back at it. And we went out there and we got banged up. Sure enough, woke up the next morning, went to a bar that night. Just the thoughts that go through your head, the opposite sex, things like that, things that I was thinking. My marriage was not in a good place at the time. Relationship with my stepson was not in a good place at the time. I was really contemplating how to get out of it, and drove home across Alligator Alley after dropping my friend off, just headache like I couldn't believe. And it wasn't the worst I'd ever done. I've done a lot worse, but it was just me alone in the car with just the blinding lights. It was just one of those blindingly hot, sunny days driving across Alligator Alley, where it just the same. It's like driving in a snapshot. It's just literally the same
Yes.
scene forever. And I'm like, are we gonna keep doing this? You just lost your brother. You just lost your mother. It's a reason why your dad's gone. It's like being friends with somebody who murdered your family. You know what I mean? It's
Yes.
like
Yes.
being friends with somebody who murdered your family. And yeah, I just drove home and told my wife, and she was like, "You're gonna quit smoking weed." And I said, "Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna sure try." And I called up Matty Fropro, who I was playing pickleball at the time. And that used to be my thing. I'd get banged up at night, and then I'd go play pickleball at 7 in the morning and sweat everything out, go home, take a nap because I didn't sleep well, take a shower, and start my day around 11. And my wife was like, this doesn't seem to be working. You're going to be starting your day at 11, kind of thing. And he was basically show up at the Lions Club, and so I did. And three things I told myself was: take yourself seriously for the first time in your life, shut down that resident skeptic that wants to poke holes in everything that you see, and commit yourself to this program the way you committed yourself to your drinking. And those were the three things that got me through the first year. And those chips, just I wanted to get to the next chip. Those chips are important that first year. They really are.
Oh, they are such a game changer. I remember I was so excited. Every time I'd get a month, I'd go shopping and I'd buy myself not expensive price. I'd go to like Marshalls or whatever, TJ Maxx, and get myself something little because it was so momentous, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you didn't go to rehab, neither did I.
No. No.
No.
I never had insurance because I was in the
Yeah.
restaurant business. So you don't get insurance when you're in the restaurant business. So that wasn't an option. Um, and I think there's a level of pride that I had that I would, and that doesn't not. I get rehabs. I understand them. I think they're an important part, but I just don't think my personality type would have ever been to the point where I'm like, okay, somebody lock me up and let me. Yeah, I just yeah, I guess we're old school like that. Maybe it's
Yeah.
the Gen X thing, or I don't know. We see a lot of guys from all different walks. I think they do a lot of good, but I just, yeah, we didn't go.
So when you're like your first fellow traveler slash sponsor, you met with him and did he say do a 90 and 90?
No. Yeah, I heard the 90 and 90 thing. I think I missed 1 or 2 days, but I've been doing 90-90 now for 3 years. I've actually grown to love the meetings more and more as I've come along. My routine is Monday, Wednesday, Friday men's meeting, Tuesday, Thursday morning mass, which I just lectured at today for the third
Oh my
time.
gosh,
So that's
congratulations.
great. And then Saturday meeting, and the only time I don't make a meeting is if I'm going fishing, which
I
hasn't
love
been that
it.
much lately. So,
I'm
and somebody
sorry.
told me fishing's very biblical. So
It really is, especially after the last couple of weeks when we heard about Peter and he wasn't catching any fish, and then all of a sudden he turns over and there's like 150 fish. It's so crazy. So, with your life like sobriety now, how is it with your wife?
It's good. Today was a tough day. We work together. We work at home together. And we're in real estate. I do commercial. She does residential. So it's we've got stuff going on, but it's a challenging market right now.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes we don't take suggestions from each other very well, especially when it comes to business.
Oh, I
And
totally get that. I totally get that.
But the bottom line is, especially since I've been confirmed, I had to go through the sacrament of marriage, and that means a lot more to me than the civil part of marriage. We've been married 13 years civilly, and when we did the sacraments with just a few friends in the church, the way I put it is, when we got civilly married, it meant basically we do our taxes together, and if we separate, we got to split all our stuff up 50-50. And now it's there is no out, and I have to make this work, and I'll take a bullet for that woman. There's
Yeah.
just a whole nother level of experience for the relationship.
Do you guys hear that? Isn't that unbelievable? Okay, so I want to talk about the first three steps because I think they're so important, especially to me. Admitting you're powerless is huge. And then coming to believe in the power greater than yourself. In the beginning, in that first year, what was your power?
So someone put it real simply to me, saying, "Are you God?" And I said, "Well, no, that's silly." He said, "Okay. Do you think there's something else out there?" I said, "Well, yeah." "Okay, we can start there." And that was the beginning. And then the whole prayer thing, which, yeah, I was one of those people in the beginning. Every time someone got into God, I was like, "Oh man, here we go." And then talking about prayer, I was like, "Wow, what is it? Just sitting by yourself." Russell Brand had a lot to do with it. Watching his journey, yeah, I'm a big
Really?
admirer of his, and just, yeah, it was just a natural progression. I remember the first day I woke up and just, I used to do the prayers in bed at first, just kind of shut my eyes and go, okay, God, let's have a good day today, and get up. And then there was that first moment of relief I had probably about 6 to 8 months in, where I realized it wasn't my show. I think I'd finally given up control. And if I'm going to give up control, who am I going to give control to? And then through my sponsor, just kind of, are you praying? Are you praying? I learned the serenity prayer all the way through, memorized it. If I got bored at a meeting or whatever, I would just try to remember one line. So I said the serenity prayer all the way through with my eyes closed in my office. And then eventually I'm on my knees. And now it's turned into a rosary every morning with a prayer through Hallow. And then about 5 minutes of silent meditation, whatever struck me, Magnificat in the morning, most mornings, just to kind of get those juices flowing in that direction. And then just some quiet time with me and me, Jesus, and God, the Holy Spirit, inviting him into my life, which goes better some days than it does others. But we're sinners and we fall short every day. The idea is to get back on the horse every day. It was just kind of like AA, I'm sober today. I've got today. I've got today. And we just keep stacking those up.
I love that, because don't you think that God is a deterrent for a lot of people seeking a 12-step program?
100%. And I realize now, looking back, how arrogant I was to think I have all the answers and to think like my way of thinking is, it's just so arrogant. Yeah, and it's hard to say that to somebody else when they're struggling. But looking back at my journey, uh, it's just arrogance. It really is, to think, you look at black holes, you look at the universe, you look at the way, like, if the axis of the earth was just off a little bit, and the way that the planets are all spinning around each other, and how endless the universe is, and all these things that you can't answer.
Yeah.
And even the scientists that's when I started listening to them. Even they're like, yeah, there's the point where we hit and we're like, I don't know, what's the cause behind all this? And even the first life form.
Yeah.
What do you mean? There was no life and then there was life.
Who did that?
Yeah, how'd that happen? And I was listening to Morgan Freeman on one of these nature shows, and he's like, this great accident happened. And I'm like, bullshit.
Exactly. It's total. They want to sell us this bullshit. It's so true, because they're scared of PC. Are we right? Right? People they're so worried about how you're going to feel if you mention God. But if we don't have God, we have nothing, do we?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
What are your thoughts on coincidences?
It sure makes life a lot more fun when you find meaning in things that are called coincidences. Even we were just talking off air, the fact that I was confirmed 2 months ago, and this Pope who just came, God bless him, I hope he does a great job, Augustine, that was my saint. So cool. I like it. I mean, I'm not saying, but these are great things that, hey, John, you're on the right path, and we were talking about incidents that have happened in your life. And yeah, I think you can look back and go, well, maybe that was God sending me a lifeboat back then and I didn't notice it. Yeah, if I guess you can go overboard with that, but at the same time, I think there's stuff that we just can't deny, and it sure does make life a lot more fun when you find meaning in those coincidences.
Well, I think especially with step 3, when you have to let go.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to let go and have God be like, here's a burning bush, go this way, and you're going to get a life beyond your wildest dreams. I'm going to win all these prizes, all this material stuff. But it's not like that, is it?
No. So one of the things, Father Martin.
Yes.
Uh,
Father Martin's
big. If people are curious about this way, Father Martin from the 70s, the old Technicolor film with the oversaturated and him doing the thing. So one of the things I realized, when you pray, you get 3 answers to your prayer. You get yes, no, you're crazy, and yes, but not the way you expect. And that's the most interesting one, and usually the answers that we get. So when bad things happen, instead of getting frustrated and fighting it, you just, it's not meant to be. Not meant to be. Wasn't supposed to happen.
It's so amazing to get humbled to realize that, isn't it? Like, we're not the biggest thing. But being a man, I just had my husband on the podcast and we were talking about how men, being raised by a dad that you weren't allowed to have feelings, right? Shut up. You're not allowed to cry. And here you are at 60 years old and you're helping other men along this path. How does that feel? How humbling is that to be able to help another man to realize that they're not alone?
Yeah, that just hit me because one of the things, my alcoholism, I never had any kids of my own. And I wouldn't say I regret it. We don't regret our past, but at the same time, I love my stepson. He's 19. I've been in his life since he was 6. We have a good relationship. He's, EDMs, drinking, all that stuff right now, and I'm just trying to be there for him. But yeah, one of the ways I kind of reconcile that is to understand that I'm trying to make myself useful to a lot of these young men to save them some of the pain and the suffering. And one of the things, I've got a sponsee right now, younger guy, late 30s, which for me is young, and just letting them know, like, hey, man, life's not over. And I think God put me in this position to try to help young men as best as I can. That doesn't mean taking on 30 sponsees that are all under the age of 28. It just means showing up for meetings. It means, having a barbecue over at my place, which we did recently, just to have these guys and to just, one of the things I like to say once I see a guy that's really committed and doing is, I can't wait to see the things that you're going to do. One of the things this journey has given me is the ability to love. And I didn't know what love meant. And St. Augustine put it down as to will the good of the other, to want to see other people succeed. And, I was an actor in Hollywood for a while, had some bit parts here and there, and in New York. And, actors are funny. They want you to succeed, just not as much as they do. Oh, you got the part? That's great.
Yeah.
There's that certain kind of, and I always had that, I wanted to see people succeed, but not as much as me. Now it's like, I want to see people do well. And when people do well, I genuinely feel good for them. And that's something I didn't really have for a while there.
And isn't it interesting that people think that when they come into the program and they put down the drink, that life is over and it's going to be boring?
Mm,
And
yeah.
it's quite the contrary, isn't it?
Yes, it is. 6 months in, though, my wife told me, if this is what sobriety's like, I'm not so sure I'm in.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I was not.
Oh,
I was not. Well,
wow.
this was before I'd really got going. One of the things I did, I was pretty much a happy drunk, for the most part. 1 out of 10 would be violent or ugly. Most of it was the pain that was going on inside of me. But when I got hammered, I'd pull out the guitar and we'd start doing karaoke and all that kind of stuff that went with it. And for those first 6 months, I was holding on pretty tight. I remembered one day in specifically, looking out at my backyard. We have a pool and a patio, and I play a little bit of guitar here and there. And so I picked up my guitar and I was like, oh, what a beautiful day. I've got the dogs. I'm going to go sit outside and play. And the thought that went through my head was, well, if you're not drinking margaritas and you're not smoking weed, what's the sense?
Hmm.
And I realized right then and there what a hold that drugs and alcohol had on me. Like, I couldn't have fun, couldn't give myself the license to have fun unless I had something in my system. So that was a big moment. And I wish I could say it like I automatically was like, oh, wow, yeah, that's easy now. But it took a while. And, now I'll make an idiot out of myself all the time. It's not a problem. But it takes a while to get there. It's like, I look at it as breaking, it's like a ship trying to break the gravitational pull of the
Mm-hmm.
earth. You're going to expend a lot of energy in the beginning. You know what I mean? All that you need, all your boosters and your thrust and all that to get out of the orbit of the earth, of the gravitational pull. But once you get out, then you're just kind of steadying it, and you don't need as much energy, and you can kind of correct yourself a lot easier. I think is a good way to look at it.
I like that. And when you were just talking about your wife, and she's absolutely lovely, by the way.
Thank
She's amazing. And hi, Dee. I'm just gonna
you.
say. I think the family afterward is such a at least for me, I believe is a missing link. I mean, I was divorced when I got sober. And when I met John, I had been sober for I think at that point I was like 7 years or something. So I didn't have that hard part because I think when you get sober, it's hard for the spouse because I think they think, all right, well, one, you're going to go and you're going to get sober and it's over. And two, they don't realize that you're going to be going to these meetings. I mean, here we are still going to meetings. God willing, 19 years, and my husband, 26 years. And we
That's
still,
awesome.
yeah, and we still continue. It's a main part of our life is making sure we go back just to give it back, right? Because if we
Yeah.
don't give it back, we don't have it. And explaining that to a normal person, I'm doing air quotes if you're listening to this, by the way, a normal person who doesn't have a drinking problem, they're like, wait a minute, why do you have to keep going? What are you doing there? And in reality, it takes at least an hour and a half or 2 hours of your day. If you think about it, you get in your car, drive there, get your coffee or whatever, and then you talk afterwards. And it's 2 hours. And how was that for you guys?
Um, it was good. She gets it now. I have had to adjust my routines. I was doing H&I on Tuesday nights, and I've kind of backed off on that. Um, you basically 7 o'clock in the morning. I go to a 7 a.m. meeting every morning,
Hmm.
either that or mass. So she knows basically from 6:30 to 8:30, John's on home. I think it's important for us, even with the time our disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful, and we need to be around other people in various states of sobriety to remind us. You talked about the first step. That's something I really tried and I had drilled home with me is the powerlessness and the unmanageability. You have to create a really clear picture of what unmanageable looked like in your life and what
Hmm.
powerlessness looked like in your life. And you have to be able to play that tape if you're ever having temptation. But the AA meetings also are a way to reinforce all those things.
Hmm.
Somebody tells something about where they're at and you remember where you were. Because as we get more time, that's how I used to relapse. Oh, I got a couple of days under my belt. I can funk a joint. It's not a big deal. I'm just going to have weed. You know what I mean? But I always wound up in the same place. We always wind up in that same place. So I think it's important that we constantly reinforce who we are, who our people are, hear their stories, they hear our stories. We're constantly reminded that we've got a disease that we have to keep in check. I brush my teeth, I eat every day, I go to a meeting.
And she's okay with that because I
Yes.
know that it's so interesting because so many women I know, their husbands go, and these are obviously normie women like Diane, and they're like, oh, my spouse, they're going and getting all this attention. They get all these rah, rah, rahs. They've changed everything. And the wife is like sitting there, okay, he's gone and changed everything in his life. And I'm here. And what do I get? You know what I mean? I don't get that attention. How do you guys manage that together?
She's great because she's a very social personality herself. So she's been welcomed in. I do a men's meeting, like 8 guys over the place on Monday nights, and my wife comes out and talks to everybody. And she's gone to the Taste of Recovery with me, and she's helped me with other events. So she's jumped in. Funny, a little story about Diane. She did AA for 5 years when she was in college.
Wow.
Yes, she's not an alcoholic. Although recently she even said to me, like, I'm not an alcoholic, but I find I don't sleep well if I don't have that one, vodka. And she was great. Like when I first got sober, she's like, do I need to clear everything out? And no, I don't think that, if I can get alcohol anywhere. If it's in my house,
Right.
I need to be able to stay away from it because I don't want to do it. Um, so yeah, she was saying like I said, well, maybe you should try to stop. So yeah, but she's very, very social. She's integrated well, some of the members and the wives of some of the other guys.
Yeah.
So there's like a wives club of non-AA people, the wine drinkers, we call them. We actually like when our wives get together and socialize and do all that. But she's great about it. And it's opened us up. You think when you get sober, you're going to be less sociable. I've got 50 times more friends than I've ever had in my drinking career
Mm.
just by going to meetings and getting in the middle of it. And that's so important. If you're going to do them, it kind of like, and that's something I've been able to do lately is if I do something, I get right in the middle of it. I'm not afraid of people I didn't realize how afraid of people I was.
Oh, I love
I
that.
really
Yeah.
was afraid of people. I was, because I would get butthurt on anything. You said hi to me yesterday, you didn't say hi the same way today. What'd I do to you?
Yeah.
That's how that brain works.
Oh,
It's just, and then, okay, well, I don't like you either. And then you find out the guy lost his dad 3 days ago, and that's why he didn't say hi to you the same way, and you
yeah.
feel like such an idiot. But that's that king baby that walks into AA for the first time that has to, you got to send him on his way. You got to grow up, even if you are in your 50s.
But I love that because that really is an example. And thank you for sharing that because so many men that are probably listening are like, oh my gosh, I can totally relate, but I don't know how to say that. Because I think so many men don't know until they get into the program. I mean, it's so hard for so many people just to cross that line and say, okay, I'm ready. I want to raise my hand, say, hi, my name is da 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 da, and I'm an alcoholic. But once you do, it gives you the freedom to be transparent and your authentic self, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of what year three's been about, is finding, I used to say, finding out who my authentic self is. I had so many masks, and just by my living stuff, being in so many different areas, I learned to adapt.
Yeah.
Well, who's the guy in the middle? Who's the guy at the center of this whole thing? And it's been great to find out, defects and all.
It's
And
awesome.
that's the thing, and talking about like people walking in for the first time. I remembered walking into the rooms for the first time, and man, the colors were so bright and everything looked like it had edges on it. Being sober a
Mm-hmm.
couple of days in a row,
Mm-hmm.
everything looked like it was going to hurt you. And then you talk to somebody and you feel like they put you down, or the guy wouldn't remember your name. And, but you just got to keep plowing through that. You got to understand, like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the other side trying to get you. And I used to say to myself, all right, I'm going to get 3 numbers today. And then you call one guy up and he's like, who is this? You're like, this AA is crap. I always knew it was crap. And like, you got to fight through that. I remembered one day I had a sponsor, my sponsor, Maddie, and I walked out of a meeting because I was like, everybody in there, the shares were terrible. It was I, me, and all the higher power this and the God that. And he goes, maybe it's not the meeting, maybe it's you. And that was like kicking the what. And, I hung up the phone, and yeah, I was like stomping the ground. But that was one of those moments where God entered my life and was like, hear it, listen to it.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
said, you know what? Those 3 things I said in the beginning: take this program as seriously as you took your drinking, take yourself seriously for once. One of the gifts of this program is I've allowed myself to be fathered. And with somebody who'd
Mm,
never had a father in his life, I don't know how to be fathered.
yeah.
And now I got a big father, and I've got a lot of men in the room who father me. And I let them.
Mm.
I let them tell me things I don't want to hear, and I listen to them. One of the things when I was drinking, people always said to me, no matter what, drinking or not, just my life. Well, John, you got the whole thing figured out. I don't know why you asked me for my opinion. Let me know how that works out for you.
Yeah.
Now I understand what all those little smiles were when people would talk to me, and I'd be like, oh, they're buying it.
Okay, now we're going to pivot a little bit. I want to ask you, out of all the religions that are out there, why did you choose Catholicism?
um, the mass, the mass. When I started to do my 4th and 5th step, I started to read Carl Jung, and it talked about how our secrets keep us separate. And there's a gentleman in the rooms who mentioned that I would go to on these things, and he told me that Carl Jung said the mass is one of the most perfect things that human beings have. I'm like, well, why is that? And so Fulton Sheen and the mass. And now when I go to mass, it's like 1 long hour of meditation. And the mass, going in and acknowledging God and showing your appreciation for God and your adoration of God, that higher thing, that thing that makes all of us who we are. And then the idea of confessing our sins, the idea of asking for redemption, contrition, in order to prepare ourselves to take Christ into our bodies in the Eucharist. Those are the 4 stages,
Mm.
and they even get broken down: purity and all those other things. Yeah, the more you dig in, and looking at the way that every every candle has a meaning, and the colors they're wearing has a meaning. And as alcoholics, we need guardrails. We really do. We've been falling way off to the sides of the roads for so long. We need guardrails. And the more I dug in, the more I realized Catholic means universal. And so I had all those thoughts about the Catholic Church. Confession. I'm going to tell some stranger what I did wrong. Are you crazy? But that's a fourth and fifth step. And I did that. I told another man things that I had never told anyone else. And the freedom that came with that, now I get it. Now I get why you do it. It's one thing to rationalize things with who you may think your higher power is or what's going on, but it's another thing to tell another human being some of the stupid, crazy, shameful stuff that we've done and have them go, yeah, me too. And not have the earth swallow you up when, crack open and bring you down. There's incredible freedom that comes with that. That's the reason why it's in the 12 steps. But yeah, Catholicism is the universal religion, and I love the tradition of it. And there's a big movement of young people coming back to the church. I don't know if you saw it today.
Oh, I know.
It was all young kids in that audience. It was
Yeah.
awesome in the area. It was just
At the
incredible.
Vatican.
Yeah.
So my question going to the Catholic Church.
Sure.
So they said go to mass.
Yeah.
And Carl Jung, you read that. So did you just get in your car and drive to the closest Catholic church, or what did you do? Because there's so many people that are going to be like, well, wait a minute. Tell me exactly what you did, because people are so fearful of, for one, going back to what they used to have, or two, going to someplace they know no one. Like where did you go? What made you go there? And when you left, how did it feel? So your first time walking in there, I know it's like going to that first time you went to the Lions Club and you opened that door. For me, it was like going to the gym. I don't like going to the gym, those people who know me. And I was like, do I really have to pull open this door? But going to the Catholic Church for the first time.
So I didn't go to a Catholic church first. I got sober.
Okay, really?
I went to some other churches.
Okay, so where'd you go? Just tell us. We all want to know.
Do you want the actual name?
Yeah. Or you don't have to tell me the actual name. You can tell me the denomination.
It was your typical non-denominational, not really anything. And what I found was, and the reason why I was attracted to the Catholic Church, among other things I've already mentioned, is the other churches seem personality based. It's all about, oh, you got to see this preacher. Oh, this guy slings the message like you never even could believe,
That slings the message, you guys.
That's what I had people telling me. And I would go in there. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of Christian rock. U2's about it for me. I love U2. But when you start getting into like, was it Striper and some of these other bands that came out that were like, and the changing the lyrics to the blood of Christ, I want the traditional. And a lot of these young kids want the traditional too. But I bounced around. I saw a few things. I'm just like, it's just not hitting. And then somebody in the rooms was like, read this book. And I said, yeah. And I said, can I tag along one day? Yeah. And I just asked him. And Diane, who's a cradle Catholic, when I told her I was going to become a Catholic, she looked at me like I had 10 heads.
I'm sure.
Now she's come back to the church.
Yeah.
And my journey has inspired her. So that's been great.
So that first time you went with this friend of yours, which is so big, again, for a man to say to another man, can I tag along with you?
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of courage, John. It's like, that's hard for a lot of guys. I'm sure they're sitting there and they're thinking, just like you've said on so many different things you've thought about, and you sit on your hands and you're like, well, I don't know. But you were courageous to say, can I go with you? Because that's huge.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you say it that way. I was training for it in the rooms because the guy who took me was part of a group of guys that I secretly resented because they didn't ask me to be a part of them. Here we go, like the kid behavior that we have. I hate those guys because, they don't want me in their club. Don't they see how great I am? And the gentleman's name, Jimmy, and I felt something about him that I was attracted to, but he had so many guys around him. And I heard someone told me he does a Thursday night like group meeting. I'm like, I really want to be a part of that. I wanted to keep the message, and wasn't really thinking religious at the time. It was more like companionship, fellowship. And they were like, yeah, but I think it's just his sponsees, you know. So, and I was like, screw him, you know. And then the maturity, I guess, that you get being sober, I was like, well, why don't you just go ask him yourself? You're a 58-year-old guy. I mean, come on. So I went up to him one day and I'm like, hey, Jimmy. He's like, hey, bro, how are you? And I'm like, I'm good. I said, I heard you do like a Thursday night. You know, I'm like the shy guy, you know, like
Yeah.
kicking the dust, you know.
Even though you're an actor and everything else, you go on stage in front of everybody, but to
I'm
ask.
like, Jimmy, I heard you guys are like doing this like meeting thing. And do you think I could, bro, we'd love to have you. Absolutely. We'll be there Thursday. And that grew into, I'm curious about Catholic. I'm curious. And he just fed me the Fulton Sheen books. He never pushed anything on me, but after reading the Fulton Sheen books, it was just a natural progression to say, hey man, can I follow you? Can I meet you at mass? Sure. O'clock, 11. Sure thing. 11 a.m. And that was it. We started going from there.
And then when did you realize that you wanted to become Catholic? You wanted to invest your time, your energy, because now you're already investing all this time in your sobriety and helping others. And then you decide, all right, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to do RCA, which is what you do in the Catholic Church to go through confirmation. And I always say this to people, just so you guys know, like I was a cradle Catholic, just like Diane. So I always went, it wasn't like I didn't pick to get confirmed. It was like, Elizabeth, you're getting confirmed. You're getting your first Holy Communion. We're going to get you a beautiful dress. You're going to look like a bride as a little girl. And it was so exciting. But really getting to this place, you know, I've already done all those things. And I'm kind of envious of people who go back and do, because my son just did RCA as well. And he was just confirmed the same time you were because of whole long story, which you guys have already heard on the podcast. But so, what was it that you finally said, all right, I've already invested this time in doing, I have my own career, I have my own business, I am a commercial real estate broker. That's a huge amount of time. Your wife's a huge amount of time, your stepson, then you've got your 12-step rooms and you've got the sponsees you're taking. And then you say, all right, I'm also I'm going to invest my time and I'm going to become Catholic. How did that feel?
Talking about synchronicity, things that happen in your life. When my mom passed, I had to grab a lot of stuff. So I was cleaning out the garage and there was a diary in there that my grandmother had left. And it was one of those fill in the blank diaries, like gives you prompts. And so I was thumbing through it and it was great. And who she voted for and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, things like that. And then I hit a page that said, I wish my grandson John called me more. Yeah, I become so selfish. I didn't even call my grandmother that much anymore. And I had rationalized it as, you know, I call my mom. They had 2 different phones. They lived in the same house. I'm like, oh, she'll tell her how I'm doing. And not thinking like, she might just want to hear your voice. You know, she might want to hear it come from you. And yeah, so that. And then I'm flipping through and the next page said, I wish I could get back to my Catholic faith. Yeah.
Talk about a God wink, John. There's no coincidence there. No. She was talking to you from heaven.
We're going to go this route. One of the things
Not to make him emotional, but you guys, you know I do this.
One of the things that Father Dennis said that I didn't even think of that was so obvious was you just completed the circle for your grandmother. You know that. Yeah. And I was like, she's with me every day. Yeah. And with me and then with me when I go to church. And she's very happy. Yeah. I bring her to the church every morning, you know, when I go Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday right now. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, those were, you know, you talk about, and I don't think if I was still in my disease, I would have been able to notice that. That's what we start to do. We start to notice, you know,
I always say that when I was in my active addiction, I used the anomaly of an old, you know, I raised my kids in Philadelphia and there's a lot of old churches there. And when you're in Europe and you go see some old churches that you just stumble upon and there's stained glass windows. And when we're drinking, at least for me, it was like the whole thing it was beautiful, right? It was beautiful, but it was filled with soot. But the minute you get sober and you put down the drink, all that soot disappears. And you get to be your authentic self again.
Yeah. and you get to feel things. And you can go to these places and come out of them.
Yeah.
We don't wallow in misery. We visit it, and then we get out.
Yeah.
And we can be sad and cry about these things and discuss them, where some people, my old self would just be like, not going there, because you're going to come out. Jimmy and I, we went for Easter vigil, or it was I forget which one it was. I think it was Friday.
Yeah. Good Friday.
Good Friday.
Yeah.
And there was a procession, and then we went into the Adoration Chapel after they did the ceremony in there. I'm not even sure I forget what it was, but so I went in.
The washing of the feet and all that.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then sobbed uncontrollably. He did. I was worried. I mean, just big time. And my wife was next to me, and it was just a very moving moment. We were all there and just looking up at Christ and realizing, like, he wants to take all your sorrows from you. He wants them. Give them to me. That's why I'm here. I want you to live a free life. I love you. I know what you did. I love you. Let's go forward and do some good. Let's go help some people. Let's live a happy life. Give me it. That's why I did this whole thing.
Yeah.
And we walked out right back into happy-go-lucky. That's what we're able to do. That's the power of Catholicism, I think. We do it, face our sins, confess our sins, ask for forgiveness, repent, which is different than regret.
Right.
Big difference. Regret means I'm sorry. How many times have we told people I'm sorry?
Tons.
I regret what I did. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to change. Repent means to accept it and then make the effort to change.
Exactly. So when you took the confirmation, when you took RCA, what was the biggest thing that you would say that you took from that? And how long was it?
It was about 7 months of meeting every Wednesday for an hour and a half. The first thing that got me was it was kind of freestyle. Like, they gave us this big book and it had all this stuff in there, and they're like, "Well, read this." But they never went back to that book again. It had all these little leaflets and stuff. And what I loved about it was, told you why everything was where it was. And, I always said it was like reading one of those like Led Zeppelin 70s covers where you're like, oh, that relates to this song, and that's Jimmy Page's dog, and this is that, and that's, like everything that you see has a meaning to it. And it's all depending on time of year. I love all that about it. A, B, and C, you've got 3 years, and ordinary time, and Jubilee, and all these things that I never even knew about. But yeah, it was just kind of freestyle. There was a couple of slides that he did, but other than that, it's like, all right, let's talk about God. What's on your mind? Where you at? And then kind of relating all that other stuff. And then it was, hey, by the way, this is going on Sunday. You might want to be a part of it. And then towards the end, it gets into the whole, the 3 scrutinies, and we start to be obligated to show up for these things. But it was very kind of freestyle, which I liked.
Well, the person that was doing your RCA class, he was also not a cradle Catholic either, was he?
No. Deacon Greg. Deacon Greg's an interesting guy. Converted, software guy. Like, I've always find interesting when I find people that are way smarter than me that converted. I always want to pick their brain a little bit. But yeah, they kind of came to the same conclusion I did. Like, I don't have all the answers, and people way smarter than me believe. Why can't I give it a good look? And yeah, he's a deacon now. He's great.
And then you found, with all the saints that are around, I have a book that's got 365 saints in it. So there's a lot of saints out there.
There were so many.
Yeah, there's so many saints. There's saints for everything. I mean, literally, there's St. Judas for like impossible things. So how did you choose St. Augustine?
So I was between Aquinas and Augustine. Aquinas because of his scholarliness, and even though I didn't do well in college, I've always been a reader. I've always been I've always been pursuing things, whether it was always tried to think of myself as a big reader. One of the things, once I got into Catholicism, one of the moments after a while, I realized I threw out all my self-help books. I realized I didn't need them anymore because it's all in there if you just read it and pay attention, and then who would think by quitting one thing, I would be able to get discipline in other areas. Now the problem is I need to whittle down all my interests. You can't.
No, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that, John.
Well,
you got to keep going.
That's what I love about podcasts. I'm looking at your paintings and all this stuff. It's such a rich life, and you show it in your art, which is great.
Oh, thank you. It's so interesting though, because I think going back to what we said, when you get sober, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have my life's going to be boring. I feel like there's not enough time in the day.
Amen. Yeah, for sure.
And you didn't finish college.
Why do I have to sleep so much?
I know, right? I mean, I could be up all night painting. I could be making podcasts. I could be doing whatever. And so when did you finish college?
No.
Have you ever thought about going back?
At this point, no.
Okay.
No, but I have. One of the things, to my credit, I will say, when I was acting in LA, was I basically took 15 books and made myself read them.
Wow.
I don't know how much I retained because I was stoned probably when I was reading them, but a lot of them sunk in. Shakespeare, Ayn Rand, Fountainhead, which I look at that whole thing now and I'm like, okay. Another time you thought you had all the answers. Milan Kundera. I just kind of was very interested in Victor Hugo, Les Miserables, which is absolute genius.
Yeah, wonderful.
Even translated. I just kind of classic books, classic literature. I've met with people that got lit degrees and realized I actually probably know a lot more. And it goes back to like we were talking about with Cradle Catholic. My wife is amazed at how much I know that she doesn't know. Like, she's like, there's a difference between when you have something kind of put on you and when you naturally gravitate to something. There's a difference,
It's so different. And I think that I think Mormon, you don't get baptized as a Mormon, I think, till you're 10 or something. Like, I'm not for sure. You guys don't take me that that's actually right. I don't know the actual age, but I know you're older. And so for me, when I hear you and my son who talk about these things, I don't remember. Yes, I went to Catholic school. Yes, I had to do CCD. Yes, I made my sacraments. They're all in the church, history books. You can go back and find the archives. But to know that you're older and you can retain things is unbelievable. And tell me this. So you were one of 25 people that were confirmed?
Yeah, it was about 25.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It is.
There's a resurgence.
Oh, yeah.
Then when we were...
I think we have 700 families that have joined St. Vincent's.
Yes.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And then what I found so interesting is this past weekend, and you guys we're recording this on what is today, the 8th of May. And last weekend it was a young man's, he just became priest and it was his first mass. And in the crowd, not only was there the congregation, but there was his friends, and there were so many nuns and so many priests. And then there were 3 pews long, I would say 20, at least 30 men, if not 40 men in black suits. So because I'm an inquiring mind, I went up to them and I said, what are you guys doing? And they were all like my kids' age. And they were literally they were all my son's age. Yeah. And I said, what are you guys doing? And they're like, we're becoming priests. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So I have a theory on that.
Okay. I want to know, please.
So let's look at like the decades, 60s, right, 50s. Things were, family was still very important. People went to church. Not that it was perfect, but 50s, 60s, drugs, do what you want, have sex. It's all good. 70s, still kind of in between. 80s became make your money, do your drugs. It's all about the car you drive, the house you got,
Yeah.
90s became all about nihilism, right?
Yeah.
Nirvana.
Yeah.
I hate myself.
Yeah.
I hate you. I hate life. I hate everything. Drugs don't work, right? And now we've moved into, okay, we've tried everything. else.
Yeah.
We've done all that stuff. Having limitless sex doesn't feed you. Doing all the drugs you can is not getting it done. What else can we do? What else is there? It's like, well, there's a saying we have in the church that said, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. What is that?
Mm.
And that's what these kids are fighting. I read an article in the New York Post that said that these people went, kind of like me, they went to the other churches and like, I'm not feeling it. I like the tradition. I like the fact that every mass is the same. It's about the process, and there's a homily that's thrown in there. And I think Father Schmitz and people like him are doing great work to kind of get that message out. And they're making it cool.
Oh, Hallow is like game. I mean, that's what brought me back to the church. It was Hallow. Literally was Hallow. I was like looking for something. I'd been Episcopalian. I mean, everybody who knows me knows I was Episcopalian. And then I went back to Catholic church. I went to some of those churches with the bands, and I'm not trying to put them down. It just, for me, I was like, what am I doing here in this smoke? I mean, I didn't think that I walked into, the Kennedy Center to see a play, but it felt like I kind of was. And I'm like, wait, this is kind of weird. And you're trying to sell me something that I'm not really buying. Where the Catholic Church is just, it's like the tradition is so deep in my blood that I just love it there.
Although some purists will tell me, well, they changed that a little bit.
Oh yeah,
they changed
have
that a little bit.
Yeah.
And actually, it's not the Latin Mass, which is the Latin Mass you're supposed to be doing, which is fine. You're always going to have that. I hats off to the men. That Mel Gibson, Russell Brand, Chris Pratt, Mark Wahlberg. These guys who are not scared to profess their faith. I think that made it appealing to a lot of people. And that's not easy.
No,
that's not easy.
Well, look at you.
Yeah.
You're on here telling everybody your story. I mean, it's amazing. And I'm so grateful for that you're willing to be transparent. How does your Catholic faith support your sobriety?
Oh, they're so intertwined. It's just one feeds the other. So many times I'll be at church and relate it to something out of the big book or the steps. And then, there's just, there was a couple of instances, and they're not coming to me right now, where I'm listening to somebody talk, and I was listening to a religious person talking about defects of character. They're Jimmy says it's spiritual kindergarten is what AA is. It's spiritual kindergarten. And they're confession steps 4 and 5, atonement 8 and 9. Yeah. Prayer 10. 3, 1, 2. Powerless and unmanageable. Even if you're not an alcoholic, I think that if you realize we're all pretty much powerless and our lives can become unmanageable, give it up to a higher power. Yeah. I think, someone says all the time, 12 steps would be good for everybody to do, to go through.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody would get a benefit out of it. What was it? Kissinger said, they asked him what the greatest contribution to America has given. He said AA.
So did the Dalai Lama.
The Lama said that.
Yeah,
did he really?
Yeah. The Dalai Lama said the best thing to come out of the West is definitely the 12-step program. So do you have people that you're working with right now that are also Catholic, or you have they're non-denominational, and how does that work?
Most of the guys I have right now are not. They're not. So I try to tread lightly. Because I know when I was at that stage, I just keep telling them to be curious, keep asking questions, keep your prayer life going, even if it's just waking up in the morning. Like I asked the gentleman I was just with, he says, yeah. I was like, read something inspirational. The Serenity Prayer all the way through was almost my whole first year. Just reading that and, getting lit, taking it in, living one day at a time, enjoying each moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace. Mm-hmm. That's big, taking the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right. If I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy forever with him in the next.
Amen.
So living for that, otherwise we're all just meat puppets banging up against each other.
Now, wait, what was it like? What did it feel like when your first sponsee said, "Can you help me take me through the steps?" What did that feel like as a guy? Because I know for girls, it's even hard to go up to another woman and be like, "Can you," like, you're asking somebody out, and girls don't normally ask guys out. So, but for a guy to have another man come to you and say, "Will you help me? You have what I want." How did that feel?
Yeah. It took a while for that to happen. Like you're kind of wishing for it, and then it does happen, and then you realize I got worked a couple of times. Guys that were in rehabs that you realize they just get extra credit for saying they have a sponsor, and work with them, and then after a couple of weeks they go back to Maine or wherever, and they don't call you anymore, and you're like, oh, where'd that guy go?
Right.
I just spent 8 hours with this person going through the book. I thought he really had it.
Yeah.
No, it's always an honor. It's always an honor. But at the same time, it's an ego check, in the sense of, we're not in the results business.
Mm.
I'm not going to get you sober. That's the first thing I tell guys. I'm not getting you sober. There's no download that I can get. I can't give you a magic or stick and you throw it in your brain and you're like, oh, I'm fixed. No, it's you got to do the work. And I've had guys that came in and like, did you read the chapter? Well, no. Well, did you underline anything? Well, no. It's like, well, then it's going to be a lecture, and that's not what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a discussion. You have ideas, I have ideas. You challenge me, I challenge you. We wrestle, we play with it. You go home and think about everything, and that's how you do the steps. The steps happen between here, and it's all about connecting this little 14-inch thing that we get disconnected from as alcoholics, our heart to our head. And that's contemplation, meditation, contemplation, all those things that we kind of discount nowadays. Your thoughts,
so true.
Your thoughts that turn into actions.
So true. What advice would you give someone who's struggling with addiction and searching for faith?
Don't go it alone. Get help. They always talk about terminal uniqueness. We all think we're terminally unique, but you're not. And there's somebody out there that gets it. And there's somebody who's going to be able to talk to you and get the message right. Don't be discouraged. If you walk into a meeting and you don't feel it, go to a different one. We're blessed to be in Delray.
Yeah.
I was listening to Tucker the other day, and he was interviewing, and Delray came up. It's they make fun of us. It's like the rehab capital of the world. Well, the other side of that is you've got more diversity of personalities here that are doing the deal. Okay, yeah, we've got our stories, but there's a core of people here. One of them's Tony Allerton, who started this whole Crossroads thing. There's a core of people that different personalities that will get you sober, if that's what you want, but it's got to be you. They can help you. So don't give up. There is another alt. I wish I would have gotten this earlier, but that's God's plan. It's the way it's supposed to be. And I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now.
And what brings you real peace and joy today?
Dogs.
Dogs. God spelled backwards. I love that.
My dogs. I learned so much from them, and I'm trying to learn how to train them now. Yeah, it's funny. When you go into the rooms, I didn't think I was a materialistic person, but I'd hear people share about how their life was. Oh, my life is so amazing. Like, dude, you pulled up in a Corolla. Come on. Now I get it. I don't require as much. Roof over my head, my daily bread, spiritually and nourishment wise. And I'd like to travel, but it's not necessary. Fishing, I like to fish, but I can do it off the beach. I could do it wherever. I don't need a boat, big boat, and then 4 engines on the back. Guitar. I love music. I sing at church now. Badly. I did Hallelujah today. I did it pretty good. Yeah, I did it by myself. I led everybody. Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Oh my gosh, John, it's been such a pleasure having you on this show. Oh my gosh, I'm
Thanks
so
for having me.
excited. Thank you so much. Now, if somebody's out there and wants to follow you and find you anywhere, where can they find you or reach out to you?
So yeah, in the restaurant business for 30 years, which a lot of alcoholics in the restaurant business. So it's not easy. Actually think about maybe doing a podcast myself on some of that stuff because it's tough when you work those hours and you're in that environment.
sure.
I was a bartender for 30 years, so tried to get sober as a bartender, didn't stick. So South Florida restaurant guy on YouTube, John Brewer on Facebook, Instagram, SoFlo restaurant guy.
And I'll
I do
have
restaurant brokering now. I do a lot of restaurant sales and leases amongst the commercial stuff that I do.
So this is pretty exciting, you guys. So if you want to reach John, I will also have all of his links in the description. So all you have to do is click.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy. You guys, if you have any questions, again, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. It's been awesome. Give me a hug. Mwah.
Love you.
Love you. Thank you so much.
And I love that guy behind the camera.
I know. I have a cameraman. You guys might be going, okay, wait a minute. You're going in and out. That's never happened with you. Well, my hubby decided to say yes, he'd be the cameraman. So, honey, thank you for being the cameraman. And you guys, please subscribe wherever you watch or listen to my podcast. If you could do that, I'd be greatly, greatly appreciative. Take care, everybody. And remember, you are never alone. Thanks for listening to Conversations with Bizzy. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, if you could subscribe, that would mean the world to me. And follow me on all social media. And you can also get my newsletter every Friday morning into your inbox. Just go to elizabethchance.com and subscribe. Take care.